Good morning, everyone. For those of you who are following my videos, I've just recorded one short video. I think it's about 11-12 minutes long. The title is uh, are we how we are being poisoned and spied on. This may explain some of my um, statements, and probably this one as well. Um, in the not last night, but previous couple of days, I slept okay, uh, which uh, basically I wasn't poisoned with ammonia. But I was poisoned with a nerve gas which prevented me to move around because my muscles were really shaky and my mind was blurry. And if you watch one of my videos, Narc Parents and My Childhood, you could actually see how it affected me. I talked really slowly, I got very, very emotional on everything, and uh, today I'm okay because I woke up again like this after 4 hours. Obviously I was being drugged again with ammonia, and I'm not gonna go back to sleep because if I go, they're gonna spray nerve nerve gas, and that's how I'm gonna be again. I don't want to be like that. So I just like to continue uh, about my childhood. I looked at my video again, obviously, and there are lots of holes there. I I obviously can't put everything into what one 40-minute video, especially not if I'm under influence of a nerve gas. So I'm going to take this opportunity and fill in as much gaps as I can. Um, so basically, the way my parents treated me were they use a specific form of psychological abuse, which is called triangulation, which means that um, they what's the word? Um, they couple with another member of the family to abuse you. So that's what my mother did. She made my brother a golden child, and I suspect now that she would tell him lots of lies about me, what horrible person I am, and consequently my brother would start hating me. Um, the reason I know this, because for no reason whatsoever, he would start treating me like shit and calling me a liar and just, being really abusive towards me. And and I remember when we moved from a council flat to a house which my father and another friend of his built, and my dad, he just never stopped talking about this. Like, I built this, I did this. That was. I'm sorry. I'm kind of going around now, but before I forget, um, my dad would always put himself first, and he would always highlight what he had done for us. He would never give a compliment to a kid, or if we would play games, kids games, he would strive to win. Okay, he was competing with the 6, 7, 8-year-olds. Seriously. And I remember my mum saying once, "Oh, come on, let them win from now, from now and then." It's like, what the fuck? You're like 30, 40 years old, and you feel the need to compete with a 10-year-old? Get a grip. So, okay, going back to my brother. So, my brother, when we moved to the house when I was 12, so that was about 1982. And only one part of the house was made to live in, other parts of the house weren't. And I entrusted, although they treated me like shit, I took that as a normal, normal living standards, my normal living. And I trusted my mother, I would tell her things, and I trusted my brother. And obviously, they had loads of information on hand. And every time my brother would feel like, he would say, if like through teeth, he would threaten me. If you don't clean my room, or if you don't hoover my room, or if you don't do this for me, or if you don't do that for me, he would threaten me. And he'd say, I would tell mom or dad what you did, or what you think, or what you're going to do, or, he would abuse the information that I entrusted in him, or my thoughts, or, personal stuff. And no child, no sibling would be so harsh if something dodgy wasn't going in the background. I never did anything to hurt him, never ever. So this Tay bashing, my name is Tay, came obviously from my parents. I can't explain it any other way. So I actually call this psychological abuse to my brother. He was psychologically abused to hate his own sibling. So that was triangulation. That's how he obviously continued to be a mama's boy. And there were so many instances. Like, I remember, oh my God, this is so disturbing. You know what? When I would tell people this, and I wouldn't just go telling everyone, I just selected few. Well, there weren't quite few, but few compared to the world population. And yes, gosh, there's a train track very close by, so if I don't speak really loudly to this thing, you're not going to hear me. Um, so what I was going to say, yes, my mother, okay? My mother was so fed up with my dad and all the responsibilities my dad put upon her. He was never helping, he would never give a helping hand in the kitchen or the flat or anything. Everything he would do would go to work, lay in front of the telly, like typical 80s men, just a slob, basically. He got fat throughout the years as well, so no wonder. And so basically, because she wasn't respected at home, and the kids were, I was so creative, I was so curious. I also, she couldn't handle me. And the reason I'm saying that, because in London, while living in London, I had my IQ tested, and it was really, really high. It was to the level of a genius. I'm not saying I'm a genius, I'm just saying I have an IQ level, and I can understand why an ordinary saleswoman who lived a very humble life and full of violence couldn't handle an intelligent child. And my intelligence only surfaced when I started living in London. But I'm going to get back. I'm going to get back to that later, or in later videos. So well, as you can see, I live in a car. I'm gonna always point that out so people don't think it's crazy. Is she in a car? Yes, I am. I'm homeless, and I'm gonna get to that why I'm homeless as well. uh, what I was going to say, okay, yeah, so my mother didn't feel appreciated, which in a way is her own fault because she divided me and my brother. Okay, thing is, I always stood by her, but she was always pushing me away. And my brothers, as a kid, as you know, boys, they're not able to show as much emotions as women do, or much care. So I was the only one that she had, even though she hated me. She she used me big time, for doing the stuff, you know, cleaning, basically breeding me to be a woman slave to a man, because that's what she was. Unfortunately, I'm sorry. I don't. I'm not trying to be offensive towards her, but that's how she was raised, and she didn't know any better. And yeah, she would often go to where she worked. They would organize trips, like weekend trips or day trips, and she would just go. And I remember her being so happy while pretending to go on that trip. And I remember while me and my brother stayed with my dad, we ate really poorly. No surprise there. Um, he ate like fried eggs and bread and and just like really basic stuff, and hot dogs and like fast food basically. And sorry, I need to do the nitty gritty stuff. Um, so yeah, and she would come back like really miserable, like saying, "Oh, I'm back here again. I'm your slave," and you know, she was very uncomfortable. But she always said she had a great time on the trip and that sort of stuff. And she just wouldn't, you know, she would just go every single trip. I don't think she missed any of it, any trip. And I don't think that any mother who loves their children would do that. I honestly think. You know why I know that? Because every time I would say that, you know, I would describe this to women listeners, I would ask them, would you do that to your child? And without an exception, they would say no. Never, never, ever. I would go anywhere without my kids. So that's how I know. So thanks for being a good mom. And one of the most disturbing things that she did once was, she's done that often, but this one's stuck in my mind, and I will tell you why. Uh, it was sort of late afternoon, coming towards the late afternoon, and me and my brother and my dad were at home, and my mum was at this work party. And my dad was getting really anxious because he didn't have food on his table. And what the fuck? God gave you a pair of hands, common sense. Didn't you ever watch your mother cook something? Seriously? So what he did, I remember being 7 at the time, and my brother was 5. And I remember asking me, you go and get your mother now, okay? Her work was about, I would say about 300 or 400 meters or yards away from where we lived. So I would go there, um, and I will tell you what I saw it makes me sick to my stomach to this day. When I enter the premises, well, the floor, they're supposed to have a party. The windows were all covered, so it was dark. It was dark everywhere, and that's supposed to be a work party. There was dark everywhere, except there were red lights sprinkled from place to place. Red lights and dark, okay? It's like Satan is... It was really horrible. I couldn't see where I was going. I didn't recognize any of the people. They were all shades, and you know, it smelled of alcohol and cigarettes. And I could see people moving, but I couldn't recognize any of them. So obviously somebody saw me walk in, and they would approach me, and they said, "Oh, Taya, what are you doing here?" I said, "I'm looking for my mummy." And I remember them turning around and sort of smile. And they said, "Oh, she was just here a minute ago. Let me see, and let me go and find her." And the person disappeared for for me, it was a very long time. I don't know, maybe it was 10 minutes, 15 minutes, I can't know. But to me, it looked like a very, very long time. And the person came back. I can't remember whether it was a man or a woman. I think it was a woman, I think. And the person came back, and she said, I said, "I can't find her. Look, what did you want to say to her?" And I told her that my dad, we are waiting for dinner, and blah, blah, blah. You know, what my dad asked me to say. And she says, I'm gonna pass on the message. And I left. And I came back, and I heard it from my dad. What the fuck? You expect a 7-year-old to sort out your marital problems? Really? So, yeah, just for you to get an idea what I had to endure. Also, another very disturbing fact. I think I was about 6 or 7, and my grandmother lived about 100 miles from where we lived. And it was summer. My brother was somewhere. I don't know where he was. I know he wasn't at home. And I don't remember mum being at home. It was just me and my dad. And I said to my dad, "Oh, I really, I'm bored. Nobody plays with me." I remember all of my friends being on holidays at the time. And I said, "I want to go and see my grandma." That's my father's mother. And he says, "Well, I'm not taking you. I have stuff to do around the house." He says, "Go on your own." And at the time, for me, it made sense, because the thing is, I had to fight to achieve anything so much. For me to do something on my own became such a standard practice that I would never question their suggestions, such as this one, like, go on your own. For me, that was like, okay. I wasn't aware that's a really dumb thing to ask your kid. I know that now, obviously. So I packed my stuff. I'm not sure where I had it in a rucksack or in. I can't remember was it a suitcase or something? It was a sort of a bag. I really can't remember that one. So I even walked from the house, no, from the flat to the train station, which was the same length as my mother's work. My mother worked quite the opposite of train station. So even from the flat to the train station, I had to walk by myself. I wasn't escorted by anyone. Okay? Can you imagine a parent doing to his own kid these days? Fuck no. So I bought a ticket and changed trains 3 times. 3 times. A 6-7-year-old kid. Can you imagine traveling on its own 100 miles? It took me about 3 hours. It took me about 3 hours, at least 3 or 4 hours, because I had to wait on those couple of stations. So I remember, and from the station that was about 20-minute walk to my grandmother's, and I show up, and she was like really happy to see me, and she says, "Where's your dad?" And I said, "I came on my own." What? She went berserk. She went berserk. I stayed there, but I'm sure my dad got his fair amount of hearing from her. Although she didn't like me and my brother, we were kids, we were playing, so she wanted us to sit on a bench and be quiet and still. That was her idea of our childhood. And you know what's funny? In the past few years, when strange things started happening to me, I would always say this to my mum, like reminded her of what I had to go through as a child. And you know what she would say? She would gaslight me. She would gaslight me. She would deny anything. She says, "Oh, I never heard anything. I never knew about this." You never knew about this? I've been telling this since I remember. Seriously? And you remember 325 days ago what you did with your neighbor when you took your cat to a certain vet? You remember that? And you can't remember my childhood memory that I kept repeating to you over and over again? So yeah, and another instance. Sorry, I'm gonna keep going. You can actually see. I'm pause here from my story. Pause here. You can actually see that I'm not drugged anymore, and you can see the difference, the way I tell my story, my real life story from the first video, and the way I'm telling you now. I speak faster, my thoughts are collected, I'm not emotional, and you could see a huge difference, I'm sure, and that's one reason for you to believe that I have been drugged, and I know I have been drugged because I could feel it all over my body. So sorry, my hand hurt. I just swapped hands. I don't know how to do this. Ow, shit. Jesus, no, I need to be like this, otherwise you can't see me. Well, I'm ugly anyway, so yeah. The reason that stuck to my head is because there were lots of people calling me ugly when I was a teenager, and I would call my mum and she would start laughing at me. Seriously. She would never comfort me. She would laugh at me. Welcome to my world. Basically, what happened next? Oh, there was another instance when I had to do things on my own. My brother wanted to have, you know, those sports bikes with when you sort of lean forward, and they had really, really slim, very slim tires. The bikes, marathon bikes, for instance. That's how it looked. They became very, very fashionable in the 80s in Slovenia. So my brother wanted to have a bike. Okay. It took us a while for dad, to convince my dad to buy it. But eventually he did. So we travel about 30 kilometers, order a bike, and the bike was due in within, I don't know, a couple of weeks. Yeah, couple of weeks. So, because everybody was lazy to collect their bike, they never said, "Oh, you can ride the bike." They said, "Okay, Tay, you're free. You're going to collect it." And I never thought twice about not going to. I was like, I reacted to that like this, you know. So I went on a train. I was 12 years old. I went on a train, collected the bike, paid for it, and it took me 3 hours because I didn't know how to work the bike. So it was lots of up the hill and down the hill. Down the hill was okay. Up the hill, I had to walk. So it took me 3 hours to get that freaking bike home. Do you think anybody said thank you? No way. Oh, let me try it first. Let me try it first. It was all fight after that. Yeah, that was my childhood. Any other? Gosh. The, oh yeah. Oh shit. About my mum being protective, not very much. I remember, I think it was in second grade. My teacher was Mrs. Meshko. I hope you're listening to this, you bitch. Obviously, I'm going to explain why I think she was a bitch. She, I didn't do one of the homeworks, and we got a little bit of paper to take home for parents to sign, so they've been notified that I hadn't done my homework. So I bring this to my mum. She signs it, and she just does her crappy signature that didn't look like anything like signature, and I take it back the next morning to school. She looks at it, Mrs. Meshko. She looks at it, the teacher, and she says, "That's my signature, that I'm lying, that my mum signed it." And I kept trying to convince her that's not my signature, it's my mum's signature. Okay? And because she didn't believe me, she wouldn't start the class. She would position me in front of the blackboard, in front of the whole class, start shouting at me, trying to convince me, "You forged the signature." For 45 minutes, I cried. She shouted at me. I cried, denying that this wasn't my signature. What kind of fucking stupid teacher does that? Seriously, I had trauma about this. And I'm gonna, if you, anybody who's listening, okay, if you know that bitch, please forward me her number or ask her to watch this. Fuck you, cunt. For you, I had trauma, okay? The second one goes to my mum, because when I told her what I had to go through, she would never say, Tay, let's go to school and tell her that's my signature. She would never do that. She would never, ever defend me. Ever. Ever. Yeah. And it's just another story sprang to my mind. When I was 3 and 4, I was in kindergarten. I might get emotional now because you will see why. I was in kindergarten, and because I had very little hair on on the top of my head, you know, and I looked like a boy, and uh, what had happened? What I'm trying to say, I got bullied a lot. I got bullied a lot, and kids would hit me and bash me, and it wasn't really nice experience being a kid in kindergarten. The only nice experience was my teacher in kindergarten, Leah. She's in heaven now, and she was the only person in my, up to the year 20, that I can safely say I loved you, Leah. Okay, because every time kids, sorry, every time kids would pick on me, she would defend me. She would place me behind her skirt. She would make a barrier between me and the abusive kids, and she would not let anyone touch me. Okay, and I felt so safe with her. I felt so safe. And I love you, Leah, for doing this for me. Okay. The thing is, once I when I was living in London, I would make a contact with her. So we would send written letters to each other from time to time, and I was so happy to receive her letter. I was so happy. And I remember as a teenager, if I ever have kids, I would name my little girl Leah. Seriously, that woman made such an impact on me. And after I came back from London, I remember visiting her, and after a while, not the first visit, but the second visit, I remember her trying to say something to me, but she, you know, I could see she was trying to put it in words and work with me in gloves. But eventually that's what she said. She says, Taya, is your dad your real dad? And I looked at her and I said, of course he is. And then she paused, like really long pause, and she says, look, I have to be honest with you. When I watched him picking you up, he never acted like your real dad. Now, what does that tell you about relation between me and my dad? That made me think so much. She was the only one that had guts to tell me that. God bless her. I love you, Leah. And then, about 10 years after that, she died of cancer. And before she died a couple of days before Christmas. But summer before that, I would go and see her once a week. And we would sing. And we would dance. She was so skinny. And I told her I loved her so many times. But she was such a strong person. She would never let me help her go downstairs, go down the stairs. She always wanted to do things by herself. And she would give me money for the petrol. I wouldn't accept it. I couldn't have a heart to accept it. But then she break into tears, and she says I had to accept it, otherwise I'm gonna make her sad. And that's the reason I had to accept it, because I didn't want to make her sad. So it's coming up to 27 minutes. I'm gonna finish on that note, because I like to keep that memory alive. She was such a beautiful woman. She was so beautiful. She had very thick blonde hair and very full lips and very huge blue eyes. Lovely pale skin. She was so beautiful. And she was my real mum. I always wanted her to be my mum. And she is in my heart. She is. Okay, that's it for now. I said I'm going to talk about things that I said I'm going to about abuse, but I'm going to talk about that tomorrow maybe. I really need to let this one go. I hope you understand. But I'll keep you posted on stuff so you understand where all this, where I am now, derives from, where it stems from. Okay. I'm not a child abuser. I would never hurt a child, never ever. And despite what authorities are spreading, and I know they're watching this, so fuck you. This is their revenge. I will in few videos I will explain why, but I just want to feed you the facts little by little, so you begin to understand my life first, and the surroundings, and in what sort of environment I grew up. Okay. I know. What else I wanted to say? That's about it. So you can see a lot of very disturbing dynamics, family dynamics going on, and I picked every shit. I picked everything up. Obviously, it was showered onto me, literally. Love you lots. Stay strong. Narc parents, survivors, write to me if you wish. My email is tayaport69, that's all one word, @gmail.com. Lots of love.